All right, 1 2 1 2. Just testing the mic. Welcome to the Cybersky WandaVision. We've had a lot of predictions last week about how it would all end up. Episode 9 aired on Friday. Some predictions were on point, some were off, some things we still don't know. So this is our chance to debrief, as it were, if we worked for Sword or Shield, which I find it interesting that it's Sword and Shield. After the dust has settled, what do we know? And are you happy with how it all ended up? Are you disappointed? If you're joining us in the chat, what was the biggest surprise this week that totally blew your mind? Before we get started, please remember to swipe that like button on your way in. That's like wiping your feet on the doormat when you enter someone's house. You know you're going to like the video. That's why you're here. So help the algorithm know to share this with more WandaVision fans so that they can become Cybersky fans as well. If you don't know, the more people hit like as in the first few minutes or moments or seconds that they enter, that triggers YouTube to say, oh, this is going to be a really popular video. They start popping it up that Cybersky is live into lots of people's feeds. If they don't see a little action in the beginning of the video, they might not do that as much. All right, so that's you learned something for today about YouTube if you didn't know. Now, tomorrow there's going to be a talk about Coming to America. It's basically the Coming to America after party. It aired this Friday. And then for a while, I may just keep putting up pre-recorded videos until I reach my goal of 35. So today and tomorrow are going to be the last couple of live conversations for a couple of weeks. And then I have some incredible guests lined up after that for some straight up, full out interviews. Some really good people. So make sure you're subscribed and ring the bell. Now, shout out to last week's guests, Substantial, Irfan Ali, Jay Ronan, The Marksman, and LR Blitzkrieg. If you missed that segment, it was a doozy. Go back and watch that when you have time. We did way more than discuss WandaVision. It's 2.5 hours. We pulled out some comic books. Jay Ronan hit us with the classic comics. Blitzkrieg hit us with some collector's cards. So we were showing some gems, and we also got into a lot of deeper discussions about comic book culture and different books and series. But we kept bringing it back to WandaVision, and it was really interesting conversation. So thank you to my guests for making it so. Now joining us for this evening is a special guest. He is author of over a dozen books on issues relating to justice and peace, and he's the Secretary General of the International Peace Research Association. We can ask him a little bit about that when he comes on the show. He also has been reading and collecting Avengers comics since he was 8 years old, which he let us know that was 1970. So he's been in this for a long time. We all showed our credentials last episode. I've been collecting comics since about the same age, I think a little older though, 9 or 10. And he has always cited the Vision as his favorite character. And I actually read one of his articles that he wrote 10 years ago about Avengers and included Vision in there as well. So I know that he's going to have some great insights and possibly look at WandaVision from some different angles. So ladies and gentlemen, let's bring him in the room. It's Mr. Matt Meyer, a.k.a. Professor M.
Hey,
welcome
fantastic to be here. Thank you for having me. Excellent.
Well, you're welcome. Now, all my friends and family know that I'm an educator. I'm a teacher, technology coordinator, public school. I know you have a little bit of that in your career as well, but, it's good to have someone who's actually a professor. Now, is that a nickname or are you a professor right now?
I'm a retired professor, and the organization I've been repping for the last couple of years is a global association, mainly of professors, but also K through 12 educators and students from, young through to peak college and PhD students. So yeah, I'm very much in the professor mode, but I'm very much also in the mode that says We learn by what we see and what we read and what we feel. And if comic books is the medium, if TV, if shows like WandaVision are the medium, then so be it. We have a lot to learn from those spaces and places as well, not just from the books.
I definitely agree with you, especially now that it's such a huge money-making phenomenon. They really spend a lot of time. It takes years to put together each of these movies and TV series, and there's a team of writers, and usually the writers are all comic book heads from way back, and then they're also amazing writers. And the Marvel and Disney, companies, they coordinate to make sure that whatever they're producing right now is going to make sense 16 movies from now. When they get to this movie, something from this story is going to be in there, and it has to be correct. It has to make sense, and that's the MCU. So,
and that continuity and the changes in that continuity is part of the excitement. And if you're excited by that, well, then, become a history major. Because part of why I want to reference my age and that date was not just because, like I'm this old dude. You can see that with the gray hair, but also because I very much connect that part of my life as a young man, not necessarily a star student of any means, and what happened afterwards, where I became a noted professor and international representative of peace and justice studies, because there was a connection. There's absolutely connection, and it wasn't a coincidence that the comics I was reading were comics like the Avengers, storylines like the WandaVision storyline that had some complexity to it that made you think, and that's all kudos out to those high school teachers that are putting in the time and making things relevant for the students. But that's only one piece of the action, and some of that action is on the various TV shows and the various comic books that we see around us. By the way, I also want to say, having watched that show last week, and it was exciting, even for the whole 2.5 hours, I did feel like another credential is also, you had several generations of this particular look. And I thought, well, wait a second. We have all these different, bald-headed, bearded men. We needed a white beard in there as well. So I thought, okay, I better come on this show before it's too late.
Well, white beard is for wisdom, right? And your color is white. It's like Gandalf when he turned into Gandalf the White instead of the gray. It's this very distinctive look. But I'm really happy that we can now, in 2021, we can discuss superhero movies on an intellectual level. When I was reading comic books as a very young kid, it was seen as like trash, not really real reading. If you had to read books or chapters for school, like they didn't count comics. So like, not comic books, it doesn't count. And I can understand that for like Archie comics or reading the funny pages in the newspaper. But when it came to Marvel and DC, they really put a lot of philosophy, science, even math, into their comic books, a lot of culture, anthropology. So, we're in an interesting place in society.
And, I was very sad that one of the schools my son went to said that, comics weren't allowed as one of the things you could read as extracurricular reading that you got credit for. And this is a day and the age where we've had comics like Art Spiegelman win Pulitzer Prizes. And so I think that's a really wrong-headed way of looking at it. Yes, as you say. And I also think it's worth saying, and I want to get into WandaVision because we don't want our listeners to think we're all just going to be talking about academics here, but it's fun. And if you're not having fun, then you're not doing it right. History, if we're going to make history alive and relevant to today, it's also got to be fun. So I want to ask you, and then I'm going to put in my 2 cents. What was your favorite surprise from episode 9? What was it that sort of blew your mind and made you excited? I know
you're jumping right in right away. I wanted to ease into the conversation,
but off. I want to go into that. I'm kind of hot.
We're going to go over that. Okay. The predictions. Yep. I'm glad you saw last episode. So the host, after all, you have mental notes on what okay, you said this, but it wasn't. So that's good because I might not even remember everything that all the guests and myself had said last week. But the surprise that. Well, I mean, I wasn't disappointed, first of all. There's always a chance some people are disappointed. They build up, and they're like, they don't like the ending that they chose. I was very happy with it, even though my predictions didn't come true. But 2 of the things I said were on point, so I'll bring those up in a minute. But I think I liked that the way that they showed the white vision coming together with the red vision. and having those conversations. That was beautiful. That was my favorite part of the whole episode. The conversations they had, not of course, it was great fighting and battles. If you haven't seen it yet, I don't know why you're watching, because you're going to get spoilers. So this is a spoiler alert. But if you haven't seen episode 9, what you should do is go watch the last episode that we did of this. And also, did you see the Matrix rant that I did?
Yes,
like
I did.
5 minutes ago. What did you think of that? Is that why people love this show? Because they relate to that feeling controlled, or not sure if you're making these things happen in your life, whether
so
it's
I feel like
destructive behavior or
there's definitely a connection, and Matrix is one piece. And I actually saw a comment that someone made on that video, which I thought was unfair, saying, the Matrix was a space that was really challenging things, but WandaVision is not. And I thought that was incorrect. I thought that was a kind of shallow way of looking at WandaVision. No, I think they are connected. I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think it is about, well, you should pardon the expression, taking the masks off and saying, okay, we're going to look into several different angles of a given situation. So in that sense, yes, I think that's part of the appeal of WandaVision. I also feel like, I think there's a certain thing about this moment, about 21st century, about being locked in to one reality and wanting to escape into other realities. Sometimes they're the realities of the mind. Sometimes the realities we can actually create. We can think them, but then we can actually create them. And sometimes it's somewhere in between. It's not exactly a dream. It's not exactly a fantasy. It's not exactly a reality. It's something else. But that sense of possibility, black and white in full color, technicolor, almost super vibrant, kind of humorous. I mean, I thought there was something interesting, appealing, and interesting about the fact that we start with these kind of sitcoms, and then we go and get ever and ever more serious. But it's actually a mix of both. If you love WandaVision, you love it because of that comedy. You even tolerate and love the black and white episodes, and you love it because of the wild colors and splicing away from different levels of reality. And that, to me, like the Matrix and like your rant, correctly speaks to certain desires and needs that we have today to see things in more than just what the basic. What is the official line? What is the official position? What is the blue pill position?
What's on the surface? Right. We're going beneath the surface. And that's interesting what you said about masks. The whole show, there's the literal timeline. Like, this is literally what happened. Well, this happened because of that. And she came from here and she said that, and trying to figure out the plot. And then there's also the metaphorical. And that to me is why I love the show a lot. And I think that there's room for different viewers to see more or less, or whatever is on their level for them to grasp. So some people can just see it as, this is really interesting because it's a superhero movie and it's an adventure and it's exciting and there's superpowers and balls of energy and fighting and things like that. Other people see the drama of it with the characters, and then other people see the metaphor. And so people see all of that.
And there's nothing wrong with any of it. You're supposed to look, every great book, every great movie, every great history story happens on those levels and needs to be correctly enjoyed on all those levels. You watch something when you're 7 or 8 or 10 and you love it, and if it's really good and it has staying power, you love it again when you see it when you're 15 and 16. And then you look at it in 25, 26 and say, oh, I didn't even notice that part. I still love it, but I didn't even notice that. And then when you're 40 or 50, you're like, wow, that feels so good. That was so great. And it holds up. I love to see it again. So any great book, novel, movie, TV show, or moment in history has those multiple realities that you enjoy for multiple reasons and on multiple levels.
Right. So you said that I'm going to let you go first. You noticed a few things that we got wrong last week. And we made lots of predictions. So a bunch of them were going to be wrong because it couldn't all be true. So we said it could be this, or this. We said like 5 things. But what's one that you remember that you can?
So there wasn't much wrong, and the show, like your podcasts and videos, I like to look at, in some ways as a consumer, just enjoying what I get. I'm not looking to be hypercritical, which means I enjoy pieces of mass culture that other people are very critical of. But I love episode 9, and I love your shows. I think it is noteworthy that the Doctor Strange idea wasn't quite correct. Yes, clearly, especially you look at the very, very end of episode 9 and some of the post-credit little cuts, that the book and the book stolen from Doctor Strange library does factor into it and will continue to. But Doctor
I was
Strange,
right about that. I knew
you were right about
book.
that.
I was right about the book, but there's no
Right
Doctor
about the
Strange,
book,
of course.
wrong about Doctor Strange. Okay,
Yet,
that's
he
fair.
will be in it because in the movie Multiverse of Madness, but he didn't appear in episode 9. I was wrong.
Maximoff will be in future stuff, but he wasn't, either the savior or the puppet master in WandaVision.
Right.
But the only other thing you said, and I don't remember which of the episodes or rants or podcasts, which I think needs correcting, and this is one of these old head Avengers and Vision fans. You did at one point, talk about Wanda's powers to make things other than what they are, including, making an android, more real or more human. And one has to remember, especially again, if one is an old head Vision fan, Vision was never, even before Wanda, an android.
I was corrected right on the show. Yep.
Yeah. So
he's a synthezoid. Right. Can you explain more of what a synthezoid is? Is it the mean that he has blood and flesh, but he has circuitry? How does it work?
I'm not sure how much this Marvel came up with this phrase first or it adapted later, but as they define it and as we define it now in common folklore and science, synthezoid, android is basically a robot with human characteristics.
Right.
Synthezoid is a sort of hybrid, as we say these days. Human parts and machine parts kind of locked together in an interesting way. Technologically complicated, not exactly science of the moment, maybe science of the future. But the way Vision was always presented was, you have Simon Williams' Wonder Man's brain. You have obviously all these mechanical Ultron, Henry Pym parts, and you have different synthetic humanoid pieces pushed together. And the question from the beginning was, how much of that gives you emotion? How much of that gives you a soul? And it took years and years in the development of the Vision through the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc., to figure out, okay, maybe he does have some feelings, and maybe some of those feelings are feelings that are cast on him by others like Wanda. There's a mix in there that's a little bit confusing, but you know what? Emotions in general for all of us are pretty confusing.
Yeah, sometimes he's sort of the Spock, not motionless character of the Marvel universe, to go to Star Trek for a moment. And then other times he has strong emotions. And my guests last week were telling me actually they had an Instagram show after our YouTube show on the Marksman's channel. And they were going further into depth into that. And also they told me outside of the podcast that he has love for humanity. And that was very important for me to understand last week, because the white Vision has been stripped of the love for humanity. So those human qualities, the emotions, the caring and sympathy and empathy and things like that, they don't want those in a soldier. So basically what Sword did was they stripped him of that so that he could just follow orders and be a tool and be a weapon. So now when the two of them met, that was what was interesting. So you have the one that's full of the emotion and the one that's kind of been pared down a little bit. But just like the red Vision realized he was in a simulation in the town and he wanted to know what's out there, and he wanted to know why these people were acting certain ways that showed that Wanda was controlling them, like he was able to be metacognitive about it. So is the white Vision. He's like, wait, something's strange here, so it's funny that they went to all the trouble to create a weapon that they could control, but they didn't eliminate the part that could figure it out. And this is the scary part of AI in general. We feel that if we make AI smart enough, it'll be so smart that it will be superior to us and be able to cause us harm or take over the world or make its own decisions. And then it's not a tool following our directions anymore.
So let me say something about that, because I love that as well. And just to go back to my own, easily my favorite part of episode 9 in terms of just purity fun was the both ways in which the white vision and I'm going to call them the moonstone vision. I don't really like the term red vision, but the white vision and the moonstone, the mindstone vision, battled each other, because you got to see some of the actual superpower fighting, putting their hands through each other and slamming each other down and having the laser. But then you also saw them fight in the library with ideas. And that duality of fighting was a gas. It was just completely fun to watch. And it was completely true to the best of the Avengers, where you had some great storylines and you had some great action scenes, both. So I love that. But I thought some of these questions that the show pushes us to ask, depending on how many and what levels you look at it, were really, really telling. I feel like there was a lot of black and white imagery in there, and there's the white vision and the colorful vision. There's black Agatha, with
her
her
robes and everything,
and with her the white vision. There was definitely white Pietro and black Monica Rambeau. You have these interesting dichotomies. I don't know how much of them reflect some concern for racialized realities and looking at that today. But it's definitely, I think, all of them looking to press us into dichotomies, looking at differences. Even in that context of scenes, you have lots of people lining up against the military, and Hayward and what that represents, what he represents. But even that in many different ways. So you have some attacking them directly, others more creatively. Maybe I'd say non-violently, with taking down the bullets before they hit anyone, or dropping them softly. And then you have our African superhero, Monica, Captain Marvel, literally putting herself in front of the bullets aimed at Wanda's white children. So I thought there were lots of color pieces to it that were interesting. And
I didn't think about that angle.
Yeah,
I think as a superhero,
Let me say this. This is what I was going to open with.
I wonder, did she know? I'm sorry. Did she know that the bullets that she would be harmed? Because she's just getting her powers and seems to not really totally understand what's going on. I wonder if she just threw herself like, whatever happens, I got to save the children, or if she knew like this won't hurt me. I'm Captain Marvel.
She obviously didn't know that the kid could stop the bullet by himself. It didn't look like she was just ready to die, but it also, to me, I did feel like there was an uncertainty there. She was willing to make a sacrifice. Of what level, not quite clear. But I was just going to say, I want to sort of backtrack a little bit.
Go ahead.
Because we got right into it, and I love it. But what I was prepared to open with, because to me, in terms of predictions and Doctor Strange and what was really behind this whole thing, and this is definitely a little more on the academic side, but hopefully one in a way that's exciting to everyone. To me, the overarching theme of the entire series, WandaVision 1 through 9, is history matters. History matters. Because the whole thing is about taking us from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s to the 80s to today. And it's taking us through the fact that history is full of nuances, complexities, unexpected plot twists. And as a feminist historian and activist Grace Paley said, enormous changes at the last minute. So we're prepared for all kinds of changes at the last minute. And thinking of some of those bullet jujitsus, Grace also talked about herself as a combative pacifist. So that's always, to me, interesting that, you can live really in this late 20th, when Grace lived in early 21st century realities where it seems like there are dichotomies and they're not. I think about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Minister Malcolm X al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, and they're often presented to us as these two opposite figures. And I think we know more and more as the 21st century goes on that that's not true, that they weren't so
more in common than people thought.
Exactly.
Or that the media portrayed, let's say.
So I feel like this show understood the problematic of false dichotomies, of making opposites that aren't really opposite. So the Avengers began in 1963. Both Malcolm and Martin were still alive and hated, both of them, hated by the U.S. government at that time, which I think reaffirmed the idea of nuance. And Agatha says in episode 9, same story, different century. And,
Mm.
Again, that goes
And you
back
saw the
to my theme.
flashbacks with the Stark Industries missile and things like that. So that's more history as well. Not only the different decades of the television shows, but the constant flashbacks and going back and remembering things that in her
So I
past.
asked this question about today.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to choose between Wanda the Good Witch, wife and mother, or Wanda the Scarlet Witch, or Wanda the Witch whose actions sometimes have negative consequences, which he didn't quite plan for or intend
Mm-hmm.
for? I think the Wanda of WandaVision is a great reflection of these nuances and the idea that history, intent, and the complexities of decisions matter. So that's my
Well,
takeaway.
that's I really like that actually, and I remember we were talking about that in terms of Agatha last week. So Agatha, people immediately she was sold to us as a villain, because she wasn't who she said she was. Then she comes out, oh hey, she's doing all this stuff behind the scenes. So we saw her as the bad guy, and then we saw her, her history from 1693, and you know. But as the show went on, people were saying, she hasn't really done a lot of horrible things. Let's think about it. She killed all those witches in a coven, but they were there to kill her, as she fought back and killed them. Well, she killed her own mother. Well, her mother was killing her own daughter, right? And she fought back and killed her. Now, in the present, in episode 9, she explains more and more that she came there because she saw this aberration in the power. Wanda had certain powers prior to this, and prior to, I guess, Endgame, and something happened. Whether her powers, came from splitting that Mind Stone from Vision, probably a lot of it is that. But then again, the Mind Stone is not the stone that allows you to control reality. That's the Reality Stone. It just would make you very intelligent. So it's not necessarily from the Mind Stone, but she wanted to know what happened. What is your secret? Now, I said last week, and I think I was right on this. Some of my guests last week were like, well, she is just there to help Wanda. And in the comic books, it says she mentors her and teaches her more how to use her powers. I can see that happening in the future as well, as Doctor Strange helping her as well. However, I said, nah, she's there for self. I don't see her as a good or evil character. I see her as an opportunist. Her whole career, I think she's been around since way before 1693. That was just that one day they showed us. Someone told me she's like 1,000 years old. I don't know if you know how old she is, but regardless, she gained powers by learning the tricks of other master sorcerers, by taking a pendant, taking a ring, stealing a book. I want the secrets. I want the secrets. Kind of like if you remember in the old kung fu movies, because I know that you're a martial arts fan as well. The different schools would have their secret moves, and they would send a spy. Go and join that school and pretend to be a student and get the manual. And then we're going to look up the manual. We're going to know their secret moves. So kind of like that, I feel like she wanted to know Wanda's secret moves. And it wasn't necessarily to help Wanda, although maybe now she'll feel drawn to her, compelled to her as a person, and they'll become friends, a mentor relationship. But I think she just wanted to know, oh my gosh, how does she get that power? I need that. I need to add that to my arsenal, because she's been growing her power over the years. And here's someone who did no work at all and just boom, more powerful than her. And
you hit that right on the mark. And she even says in the episode, I want your power. You just, you came here, and now what I want is, I'll set it right. I'll give you the life you want. I'll make it right with the rest of the world. But all I want is all the power. And that's we know of people that just power. They want more and more power. That's not something that is uncommon to us or unknown to us. And in a way, there's an evil to it. It's not the same evil as Hayward in the military-industrial complex, but it's an evil nonetheless.
Remind me to Hayward. That's another prediction.
It opens it up, though, and I love the fact that prediction of yours was correct. It was in some ways simple and neat. There was something about the comics where the Agatha character does help Wanda. It's clear that in 9 episodes and this one slice of Wanda's life, it was harder to encapsulate the entire history that some of us read from when we were little kids, where Wanda clearly begins with a very underdeveloped and introductory and maybe adolescent knowledge of this chaos magic that she was born with as a mutant. Then she learns and reads and understands how to harness and how to work that magic. Then and you see through the comics through the years as Wanda develops and becomes more and more powerful and more able to utilize a great toolbox of different magic skills into what she does to shape and bend and influence reality. It starts off with changing the probability of things, the probability that bullet won't bend right before it hits my chest. And from that to actually being able to craft things to happen in the images that she wants to. But we see that, and we see Agatha helping her with that over the course of years in the comics. And she just sort of has it by the time we see her at the beginning of episode 1 or before episode 1. And that's okay, because we don't come at these things from the beginning, whatever that is. And we know the endings aren't the end. We know there's going to be some tricky thing. Even after the credits roll, there's going to be a little bit more.
Especially as long as there's money to be made on another sequel, right? Or another even series of movies like Endgame that culminate in something big. And we're talking about Phase 5. But to go
never
back,
we've never, Marvel has never killed off a hero that the people have liked. You like them, they're going to come back.
Well, Iron Fist.
Maybe, yeah, maybe never say never. Maybe never say
Iron
never.
Fist is someone who died and stayed dead. I was upset at that because I'm like, everyone else comes back to life. Excuse me, why not? Iron Fist. But
well, all right, I will tell you this: if Cybersky has a campaign and we grow big enough, we will bring back Iron Fist too. But yeah, that may take a little bit more doing.
So one of the things that I was talking about last week as well is Agatha. She got the book from Doctor Strange's library, so that was correct. So that's one for me. I did say she wanted to get the powers for herself. Now, I think she was helping Wanda to work through her psychosis or her trauma, her freak out, so that she could get her back to tell her the story, so she could be like, that's the secret. But I think she did it not just altruistically to help her, but so she could kind of figure out, oh, it's a stone. Well, I'm going to get one of those stones. Oh, it's a certain spell. Well, I need that spell. Or it's a mutation she wanted to know. So that's two things I got right. Now, Doctor Strange appearing was wrong. Some other things that we had hypothesized maybe could be Reed Richards. And there's a lot of artwork online of Reed Richards with the 4, an up-to-date Reed Richards drawing sketch with the Fantastic Four logo, and people saying like, oh, this is how it's going to look when he shows up in WandaVision. That didn't happen. And we also said that Hayward was going to turn out to be somebody. And that still could happen, but it didn't happen in episode 9. I thought they would reveal something at the end, maybe in the, when they come back in the epilogues like they always do. And there were 2 epilogues after this show. So hopefully people forwarded through the credits like I did. Come on, I know there's something in here. Yep, there was. And if you missed that, now go back and look at that. But I thought they were going to hint at something kind of the way in one of the Avengers movies or one of the tie-ins, could have been a Thor, Captain America. One of the epilogues showed S.H.I.E.L.D. developing for the first time, way back 20 movies ago. They were like, something happened, there was a meeting, and then Nick Fury walked in, and you see it, Sam Jackson. He's like, something, you don't know who he is yet. We're like, who's that? Okay, and they're talking, and you're trying, and then it's something, they say the initials, right? S-H-E-I-L-D. I forget what it stands for, but starts with strategic, I believe. And then you go, oh.
I've been reading the comics for 40 years. I'm not memorizing what S.H.I.E.L.D. stands for to this day. I'm actually actively not memorizing what S.H.I.E.L.D. stands for.
How about sword as well? I heard they changed the S from the comic book. The S was something else. I'm getting a message from one of my buddies. Maybe he wants to join us.
Listen, I want to say I'm not. I think maybe yes. Your predictions about Agatha were spot on and very correct and validated by some of that end credit stuff, because you really see Wanda poring over that book, whichever one of the books it is, and we will find out. I have no doubt. But yeah, I didn't find Agatha. If she was a teacher who was in part trying to teach Wanda, she was a pretty bad teacher, because she was doing it in the most kind of slap you down way, in the most kind of here, look at it this way, look at it that way. But I did think that Agatha raised, and the conflict between Agatha and Wanda raised some interesting other historical questions. I feel like the scene with them in the village where Agatha, she says she cuts the puppet strings, You've treated these people like they were your meat puppets, and she cuts the strings, and then they all start going after Wanda and saying, please let me, let my kid be a star in your next episode so that they can be freed from their room. Or I don't even remember anymore, what my original name is or my job is or what it was. And that spoke to a real issue about what we call self-determination.
Mm-hmm.
Self-determination, people's ability to determine their own destinies, and the idea that you can't have any real peace. Everything was kind of peaceful and nice in Westview, but can you have real peace if you don't have self-determination? So that was a great issue. I thought it was brought up by Agatha, cutting the purse strings and kind of shocking Wanda into the reality that her actions had some real negative consequences. But it was done in the most callous and disgusting way. And I feel like it.
So you're not going to give her the benefit of the doubt that she's actually a good person there to help Wanda. She's kind of,
I never doubt that she can't turn. She's been in prison now into this, this reality of Wanda's creation. Maybe she'll, learn some new tricks, if you will. But I feel like there is an issue about these questions of self-determination, of how people act, and neither Wanda in her subconscious creating of this blissful reality for herself or her family, or Agatha in her desire to get Wanda's power and free them, none of them were really having the good of the population out in their best interests. And what was tricky, what was painful, was once Wanda's brought to realize it, and once the multicolored vision, the Mind Stone vision, comes back. There is this sense, okay, we have to do good by the people and try to do good by ourselves as well. And that contradiction is how the episode obviously concludes.
Okay, so to talk about some other things from last week. So I was right about Agatha's ultimate goal was to somehow steal or gain Wanda's newfound powers. There was no Reed Richards, no Doc Strange. There was also no Mephisto, unless you see Mephisto in there somehow. But I don't think he made an appearance. And I believe Mephisto's story, but I don't have that much memory. I remember Mephisto maybe once from 30 years ago as a kid, so I can't remember his whole thing. But is he responsible for stuff that's in the Darkhold?
Well, I think the key thing for this is that Mephisto takes the twins back at the end. Mephisto basically subsumes the twins, as I recall, into the reality.
You're saying in the comic book, not in the show. We didn't see that.
Not in the show. No, in the show, as you say, Mephisto doesn't. He's gone. And as far as we can tell in the show, the kids and our beautiful multicolored, so-called red or purple or green, lots of different color vision. This dude here, he's gone. Now he's gone, and right before he goes is the clear words, we don't really ever say goodbye, or we say goodbye, but we've said goodbye before, and then we appear again. So I believe, there's foreshadowing to what can happen. But in the comics, Mephisto sort of subsumes the kids into his realm, and we can still find that that's what happened when the feed went weird, and these folks who Wanda had created disappeared.
Right, the feed going weird is what made me start to think about the Matrix. But when I made that comparison, I wasn't really saying that it's the Matrix. There's a Matrix and they're controlling this. I didn't really mean that. I meant philosophically why we like the Matrix as a movie and why we relate to it. And a lot of people feel like, no, that's really true. Because, scientists are, the longer time goes by, the more scientists believe we are in a simulation created by somebody. And there are synthoids right now. I don't know if you know this, but because I study technology and robotics, on a preliminary level. I'm not a scientist or anything, but so that I can teach my students interesting new discoveries in the world of technology. And one thing that really blew my mind about 5 years ago, they started to take DNA and parts of living flesh and put it into microchips to work inside the computers. Because what they realized when they, I don't want to get too far above everyone's, understanding, but basically computers run on binary, and we have something called a supercomputer, which would run on trinary, I guess. It could make 3 choices split into 3 directions instead of just on, off, yes, no, right? High, low types of decisions. So computers right now using binary can make like 5 million decisions in 1 second, right? So they do all the calculations to do everything and create what you're looking at on your computer or your cell phone or anything really fast. So now if we could get trinary going, it would exponentially be that much faster. And what they found about your memory cells in your brain so far, because they're going to, another 10, 20 years, they're going to find out even more. But so far, they believe that there are 26 different levels of pulses of electricity that your brain cells send to each other. They call them volumes sometime. When a computer sends an electrical impulse from one circuit to another, sends that data, the way that it does binary, it doesn't literally write ones and zeros. It sends either a loud, quote, loud volt of electricity or a very faint one that's almost nothing. So the faint one would count as a 0 and the loud one would count as a 1. And then it does all the mathematical calculations and makes letters of the alphabet and colors on the screen and everything else. So to show how much more complex the human brain is, we have 26 volumes. The computers now, like the laptop I'm broadcasting from, only has 2 volumes. They call it on or off, but it's never totally off because when the phone is off, nothing's happening. It's very faint and super, powerful jolts of electricity. So imagine you had 26 variables. So you could be like level 14. That means one thing. Level 15, level 16. So that's why our brains can do so much at a time. And when they realized this, they said, hey, we need to start putting organic material into computers. And someone started experimenting, and they found that you could store on like a cell or on a piece of DNA, you could store, billions of bits of information, and it will be smaller. This is the important thing, smaller than the microchips and the transistors they're using now, because it's always a race to get smaller. And every 8 months or so, we get a little bit smaller with technology. That's why the devices get smaller and thinner. So if we could store even more, imagine how, so one microchip that's the size of your fingernail can store so much data. If you remember the movie, the Rubik's Cube, the guy who blew the lid on the NSA. What's his name again?
WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and not Julian Assange, but I know what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
It's my favorite
now
movie.
All of my political people are going to be
2014, 15, yeah.
In any case, yeah.
Remember, he put the chip in the Rubik's Cube? That's how small it was, and it had all the secret data of the NSA and all that. So imagine if you could, and that was still binary. So imagine if you could put DNA and things that could hold way more data in there. So there are computers right now that have DNA and organic matter as the chip. Now, organic matter will decompose. That's why we use plastic and wires and gold and things like that. So they have to use preservatives, and then it lasts for a year or two. Snowden, thank you, Dope Action, Big Facts.
That's
yeah,
right.
Snowden,
Yeah.
I was like, how do I forget Snowden? Like my hero. But anyway, yeah. So now, so basically, what I'm trying to say is we're not that far off from a synthoid. Like you were saying, like Vision is not an android. I was incorrect. I misspoke. And a lot of people knew that. They were like, oh, he's a synthoid. That means he's actually, his body has some, real human flesh and stuff, or organic material. And
but let me ask about
we're working on that right now.
No, and this is part of what's exciting about the kind of, it's not exactly like science fiction, the kind of science fiction that the Avengers have always done, that WandaVision did. We're skirting on things that are real. And there was talk, since we're in this little science corner for a minute, and we should, come back to some of the rest, we don't want to lose too many people. But, there's talk in episode 9 about identity metaphysics. And I was wondering what you thought about that, because it does speak to some of the science over here and the consciousness over there. And so where do we have a semblance, a space where we look at what is real in terms of, there are some who would say the data is real. If you've got the data, that's it. And then, well, okay, not quite so much. There's something about consciousness and reactivity and interactivity and emotion that's also real. So who's the real vision? Well, neither, and also both.
Both, right. And that's something else that I loved about it, and I wanted to bring up today, is that part of the story is about what makes a person, what makes you you, what makes you alive. Because if something, because like you have Jarvis, you have Ultron, all these artificial intelligences, and then of course Vision, but something about the white Vision, like the soul was removed or the compassion was removed or something. And even the Vision that Wanda created was just a memory of Vision, how she wanted it.
Well,
it's not
but
necessarily
also,
the real Vision, but then why not?
and who knows
What
if
makes
it's
him the real
just
Vision or not? So those questions become philosophical
right on, very
debates.
philosophical and practical for the TV viewer, because maybe he doesn't have the white Vision, doesn't have emotions, and it's a just, but maybe all it takes is for the also not real Vision to touch him, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open up. So there's
And
no
that's my
just and there's no
interpretation of what
only, it's
happened.
all everything all at once. And so to me, the questions you just asked about community become even more complex when the questions you just started about the individual Vision or the individual human characters. It gets even more complicated when you talk about the community. So what happens when you have a whole bunch of individuals, humans or otherwise, interacting? And so I raise this question now, not exactly metaphysical or philosophical, but nonetheless, do the Avengers ever really assemble? Or maybe more significantly, it's this: when the Avengers assemble, whenever they reassemble, are they ever the same? Are the Avengers in assembling and reassembling always something different? By definition, always different because of the historical moment, because the individuals are different, because they have different lived experiences, and because of all of these identity metaphysical and also computer and technological advances that we're talking about here. So I think
now,
it's
maybe you're
complicated.
going too far now, because if you go now, you're saying like every person is not who they were 1 second ago or 1 second from now. It's a new Cybersky, and it's a new Matt every moment, because we can see when it's far away. It's easy. I'm not the Graham I was 5 years ago. I'm not the Graham I was 30 years ago. That's obvious. But how close am I the Graham I was an hour ago when I was getting ready for this show? What about 1 second ago?
Yeah. So then why is
WandaVision
WandaVision so exciting? Why do we love it so much now? Because right now, a whole bunch of us, from the tweens to the gray hairs, what are we going to be post COVID-19? What are we going to be when we can take off the masks, literal and otherwise? What are we going to be 6 months or a year from now that we are just maybe beginning to imagine and hope for during, you should pardon the expression in TV terms, next season? And those questions are real and they're
And we've been
exciting.
foreshadowing
And
next season since the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, with the advances in technology, with changes in economics, political changes. Right now, like, the world is changing so much, and it's very easy to see that. If you look at technology, you go like, oh, technology is advanced. From 1900 to 1950 was a certain amount of leaps, in technology. Then from 1950 to 1970 was huge. Then 70 to 80, and now it's like every year we double everything that we ever knew. But that's easy to measure in technology. But when you think about it, it's also true in economics. Because now we're saying, like, well, if we're sending people checks to stay home and the world somehow still runs and stores still operate, even though they're now doing service at the door or mostly deliveries. And if Amazon is the biggest business, corporation, or any delivery service, because they're about online purchasing, you've got Fresh Direct and all that stuff. So the whole economy is changing. Now we just suddenly are in the middle of a Bitcoin explosion or a cryptocurrency explosion. And people are saying, like, all top world leaders, whether they're business leaders, scientists, everyone says, it's not yet, but it's obvious to see that crypto, because it's unregulated, that it's the future. We're still tied to this regulated currency. Every country's government has a huge stake in not letting go of that regulated currency. However, it's not going to let go. Like, one day we have cash and the next day we don't, because people have these, conspiracy theories, which I agree with. They're trying to get rid of cash because then everything's trackable and you can just press a button and delete anyone's, purchasing power, and you can control what everyone's done and see what their transactions are. But at the same time, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen little by little, just like democracies get eroded and freedoms get eroded little by little. Not like some tyrant takes over the world unless there's a big war, but You know what I mean? Like first we'll take away the ability to do that, and we'll have a reason for it. Then we'll take away this, and there'll be a justification. And then over time, like I said, looking back 5 minutes ago, I feel like the same person. But if I look 30 years, so when we look back at the way politics and laws and freedom and justice have changed and evolved over the years, we'll see like, wow, we really lost a lot. But it was so gradual that in the moment you're not noticing it. And I think that's what's going to happen with the currency. Gradually, we're already gradually into crypto. And maybe we're like a 90-10% right now. I just made up that number, right? No, but now maybe in 10 years we'll be at 80-20. And then maybe in 20 years we'll be at 50-50. It will be a point where that's the main currency and fiat is the minority currency, the rare currency.
That is so and then eventually and so poignant. And I think the issue here is because it's so gradual, we can be fooled into thinking, and there's a lot of powerful figures with the big tanks, the Haywards, the military-industrial complexes of the world, that it's not really happening, that we're not really part of history because it seems gradual and we seem out of control. But not to just be the glass is half full positive guy. That is the way democracies and peace and justice die. But it's also the way, oh, and there the sirens are right now here at my doorstep. But that's also the way. That's also the way that democracies and peace and justice get rebirthed. Huh? I mean, not to do too much of the History Matters clip of it, but you know, Thomas Jefferson said, you know, the way to create true democracy is by watering it with blood. You have conflict, you have fight, and then you have rebirth. And I think that's what we have to look for and fight for. And I do think that there's a way of looking at WandaVision and seeing it in that way. We rebirth the Vision after he's destroyed. There's another challenge that we came up with by the end of these 9 episodes. We have to look at another way of rebirthing in a more democratic way, in a way that allows people in every little town to be free. Now, I put up a graphic, and I still don't know if you were able to see it. I tried to do a screen share. Were you able to see it or not?
I didn't see it. I'm not sure how the person who's invited to the streamcast, you know, is able to do that.
It's suggesting to me that I can share and that I'm sharing now. But you're not
I see it now. Now I see it, but I have to throw it into the feed. But I see it now.
Okay, so see if you can throw it into the feed. This is just a silly little thing that I came up with 10 years ago.
Oh, nice.
If you can do it.
For now, that's as big as I can go. But yeah, that's Avengers and Vision. Okay.
But it is an event. It is a vision with a little peace sign in the middle. And it's talking about a new vision of justice with peace. So I do feel like, you know, that's part of the vision that we have to have for a future world. And I don't know if we can do this, but I did create a little thing just for this show. Geez, I'm not at all sure that I'll be able to, but let's see if we can
Something you want to share?
It's a little bit of where the white vision might be going. And let's see if I'm able to do.
Did you create that graphic? Is that what you're showing us?
No, it's a different graphic. I may not be able to do that. In which case, we will link it in.
You can share if you open something, let's say in preview, or just open it on a viewer on your computer. Then you can select that application that's showing that and share that. If it's a tab on your internet browser, you can also select that tab. So sometimes what I've done is uploaded stuff to Google Drive, and then I open it, and then I share it from there. So I don't know if you can do something like that.
It may be complicated to do in the last minutes of an hour-long show, but
we don't cut off after an hour, just so you know. We kind of
I see. Okay,
so we feel like the conversation feels like a good ending point. That's why one show is an hour, one show is 2.5 hours, and then I do little 4 to 6 minute rants as well. You know.
All right, so I'm going to try one more way.
Yes, feel free.
Application window. Yeah, this is a little thing I did. I had a sort of video version of it, but do you see that now?
Let me add it to the stream. Okay, yeah. So tell us about this.
This is why I forgot Edward Snowden's name and remember Julian Assange, because you know, back in the day, the first time that the white vision was ever created was way back by John Byrne, I think in the late 80s, 1989. Right. And this is in the comics. And The artist at the time talked about, the storyline at the time talked about Vision having to be basically taken apart, disassembled,
Right.
because he was getting too powerful, because he had the ability to tap into, I think they even used the word hack, to hack into all of the different computers on Earth, and that would give him too much power. So I see the White Vision, maybe with a little more consciousness, as being the ultimate hacker. And so this is WikiLeaks Wonder Man. You have the WikiLeaks logo.
So for the
right
people who are listening on audio podcasts only, because this is going to get uploaded to the audio streams, great conversation. So describe what we're looking at here. So it's when you say white superhero, it's not inked. It's just the outline without any color added in.
Correct.
That's what it looks like to me.
Yes, and that's pretty much
logo on the chest with the globe.
Yes, and it's what the drawings of the White Vision are all about. But on his chest, in that same blue that we see in the series in his forehead, is the blue of the WikiLeaks logo, which is sort of
okay.
Yeah. So that was just a little something.
It's an interesting chest logo because it's got. At first, I just thought it was a trophy because of the shape, but now I see it's an hourglass. So you've got a map of the globe on the top of the hourglass, and it seems to be falling through, and then it's spilling into the bottom of the hourglass. Tell me if I'm seeing that wrong, if that's not really what it is. And it seems to be filling up the bottom either with water. Is the top land?
It's not clear what it is, but it's as far as I understand it. And again, this is not my logo. This is sort of borrowed from our friends in WikiLeaks. It's about information. And about that balance that we have to struggle with between knowledge and power, between the whole wide world and the powers that be, like military industrial complexes, and just people at the grassroots communities. Right. So if in some ways the multicolored vision represents speaking on behalf of the communities, the grassroots, and you look at the White Vision without consciousness or without humanity, without emotion, as being just a storehouse of data, then somehow maybe this new vision that went off at the end of episode 9 and will undoubtedly come back again in some other form, maybe the new vision will be Wonder Man WikiLeaks, the ultimate hacker for the people.
Gotcha. So that's where I wanted to jump in with what happened at the end. So let's debrief that, like what really happened at the end. I'm going to tell you kind of what I thought was going on, my interpretation, because, they write these things, like you said, any good book, has different layers and what things a reader can take out of it and interpret. So there can be other interpretations, but I felt like Wanda had put all that was good in Vision and all that she loved about him in the person that she created to live with in her fantasy world in the town in New Jersey, right, in Westview. And then Sword had removed all of that and just kept the knowledge and the ability to tap into the global internet and the ability to have superpowers and everything that Vision can do so that he could be a military weapon, right? And when they fought, I felt it's something I learned in college about debate. You have thesis, then you have antithesis, as my mother would pronounce it, or antithesis. I don't know which one. One's like a British way to say it. My mom's British.
Tomato.
And one is American. But so a person gives their point in the debate or argument. The other person, and this is how it's supposed to work. Now on Facebook and social media these days, people just yell their points over each other, call each other idiots, and don't listen to anyone. But how it's supposed to work when you disagree is you lay out your arguments and all your points of why you think your view is correct. And then the other person lays out the opposite of that. Well, I think it's not correct because of this. And they do the antithesis. And then through arguing and debating back and forth, at some point, you're either going to, one of you realize, so that's what that meant. I thought that was something else. There's a misunderstanding. So now that person yields and possibly the other person is correct, right? And it could go, you don't know who it is until you argue it and debate. And then another way that it could end up is you combine your ideas and realize that you're both correct. And you're like the blind men who one is at the side of the elephant saying, an elephant is like a wall. And the other one is at the trunk saying, no, it's like a long rubbery hose thing. It's the same element, but you're seeing different points of view. And then you synthesize. So you have thesis, antithesis, synthesize. And I felt that was played out by the two visions. So you had the physical Vision who actually exists in the real universe, not only inside of Westview and held together by Wanda's mind and by her hex. Because that Vision doesn't have, in my opinion, even though he acted like he had a body and walked around in the town, that was all created by Wanda's mental powers. Either she had a hex that was making it seem like that, or she was making everyone see that Vision was there and that he was touching things and being physical. But I don't think he was actually physical. I think he was like a mental projection. And then the white Vision is the physical without the soul and the compassion and the love for humanity. And when they got together and they started, hey, wait a minute, they started to agree with each other. And then when he touched him, I think that he was transferring something to the white Vision, like the part of his humanity. So I think he actually made the white Vision whole. I think that the white Vision is now, even though his colors is still not on his clothing and everything, but it doesn't matter. He's been reinserted, the piece that was missing. And this is how he comes back to life, meaning, superhero, like you said, superheroes never die. So that's my interpretation of the ending. So I believe that in future movies with the Avengers characters, when Vision appears, he's just a new Vision now. Kind of like you had the Green Hulk and then the Gray Hulk and then the Green Hulk again. It's just another version of him. So now we have the white Vision. I think he's not emotionless. He's restored of all of that because of this television series. It kind of brought us to that at the end of how Vision, because they killed off this super powerful and loved character. I think they killed him twice, right? First he got killed and then he got brought back to life and then Thanos took the stone. Am I right?
Too many times.
Because of time
yeah,
travel.
Listen, the only problem with that, I'm with you.
Put him back together. So that's the explanation. He did really die, but then because of this fantastical series of events of Wanda doing this to the town and creating another Vision, and she took the Mind Stone parts and put them into her and projected and used that in creating this. So there's a lot of cosmic power that controls the universe in that red Vision. It's not just a mental projection. So you might think, well, it was a mental projection. He could never inject anything into the white Vision. That's crazy. Yeah, but once you add the Mind Stone, which no one really knows everything about, but has incredible cosmic power to change things in the universe, maybe it could happen.
So I'm with you 98% of the way there. Let's look at the elephant analogy. The person at the front who only feels the trunk, the person in the back only feels the leg. You can't just put those two pieces together and get the elephant. You need third and fourth and fifth perspectives. You need to get distance. You need to get literal, maybe historical, time distance, maybe physical distance. You need distance to understand, oh, it's not just this part and that part and even the third. It's a much bigger thing. And maybe you need some time. You need to see it move. Oh, it moves that way, not this way. So it's complex. Real life is complex. History is complex. And, WandaVision is no less complex. So if you're going to say that a figment of Wanda's imagination isn't exactly real,
powered by an Infinity Stone.
But then when you're powered with an Infinity Stone, the Vision's ability to give something to add something to the white Vision, to make something real, well, then you're on a slippery slope. Because what else might be real? Maybe a piece of the twins are real. Maybe not the Infinity Stone, but love itself. Love creates something new. Yes, they talk a lot about that.
Love conquers all. And that was definitely one of the themes of WandaVision. Even though all this craziness was going on, even though she was doing something bad to the town and controlling them, and even though there was this dichotomy and Vision trying to solve the mystery and get out and all that, the fact that they had such a strong love, or that Wanda had that love for Vision in her, that's like a major theme. Like,
and the search for truth
out at the end,
the search for truth and experiments with truth, which are also not finite and not definitively, unchangingly tangible. They're sometimes intangible. Early in the show, Wanda says, "Oh, Vision, is it really you? I should have told you the truth all along." Well, maybe yes, maybe no. If she had told me the truth all along, we wouldn't have had a 9 or 10 episode wonderful series. And on the other hand, is it really you is a question that's never answered. Are you the Vision? Are you the Vision? Neither one of us, all of us. So I think between love and the search for truth, and of course, as a history teacher or whatever, a teacher, Gandhi said that his life was not about nonviolence. He said his life was about his story of experiments with truth. So experimenting with truth, experimenting with love, experimenting with all of these technologies. And yes, some of them at the moment seem fictional. We don't know of a real live Mind Stone, a non-fictional Mind Stone, or Infinity Stones that exist out there at the moment. But we do know that there's a lot we know now that we did not know 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's why when I go to New York Comic Con, one of my favorite times there is always a time with Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is, of course, a noted astrophysicist, not a comic book writer, but he's a comic book lover, and he's at Comic-Con every year because his understanding of astrophysics and our understanding of what the heck happened at the end of episode 9 are not that far off. They're interconnected, and they're interconnected because, it's a little hard to say. It's a little hard for me to accept that the vision we love just was a figment of Wanda's imagination only. The love I have for my kids is tangible, and it's a figment of my imagination, and I create it into real life things I do every day. So
Right.
figments of the imagination are part of practical, concrete reality.
And that's another thing that's relatable to the audience, is just losing someone and being at a loss and just not knowing how to cope with that. And also believing that somehow on a spiritual level somewhere, that person still exists. And some people have them existing in a religious sense in a certain location where people go after they die. Some people feel that they exist in your heart of all the people that remember them. They exist in their legacy they've left behind. They exist in their children who grew up looking and having some of the characteristics just like them, right? And things like that. And
if you dream at night,
I think we've all experienced glitches in the matrix, things that we couldn't explain. And we said, well, there's something there. We're not going to say it's God or we understand it, but there's some kind of cosmic something out there. And this show kind of brought that out there. Like, as much as it was super fantastical and a fantasy, at the same time, like you said, well, then they could do anything. They kind of can. Both in the writers of Marvel Comics, they always want to leave doors open so that they can go anywhere they want.
And
so do we in our lives, if you think about
exactly. And so do we in our lives. Exactly. If you've lost one, a loved one, and of course many have in this last terrible, horrible year of ours, and you're sleeping one night, maybe your first night of really profound and good sleep, and you have a dream, not a nightmare, not an upsetting dream, but a dream where you can see and feel and hear that person, that loved one who is gone now, who has died, telling you something, not about 10 years ago, not a memory of something they told you before, but something about your day tomorrow.
Conversation right now, yeah.
And you wake up and you realize, oh my God, they're still gone. They're still dead. That was just a dream. I don't remember it. Was it a ghost? Was it a real,
Or was it your own way of working out?
Did you create it?
Yeah, like Wanda was creating those things to deal with her loss.
Or most finally, do we not know? Do we simply not quite know which of the above it may have been? Is it a manifestation of God? Is it a manifestation of our pure imagination as individuals? Is it a manifestation of something metaphysical between life and death that we don't know about yet because we haven't used all of those circuits up here that you talked about earlier? We don't know. So just like that, we don't know the answer to every single question raised by episode 9. And we don't know correctly. We make some very good guesses. You made some great guesses last week, but we don't know for sure every piece of the string that will be nicely tied up in the next Avenger or Wanda Maximoff or other TV show or movie. But we do know that there's a lot of possibilities out there, that there are a lot of choices. We know that history matters and that we shouldn't rely too comfortably on these false dichotomies, these false differences that go out there. And we also know that it is our job in part to have fun. It's our job to talk to each other, to communicate with each other, to have our heroes and sheroes, our fantasies, and to understand that nothing is so finite. Nothing is so defined that we can't make change. We must. It's our job to make change, but it's also our job to do so while having a heck of a lot of fun by watching great shows like WandaVision and great podcasts like Cybersky.
Thank you. So, I wanted to ask you a couple things, and originally I was going to get into this before we got into the conversation, but you jumped right in and said, "What about the white vision?" And we've been going at it. So, in your, your bio, it says something here about Secretary General of the International Peace Research Association. I'm curious, so maybe other people are too, as to what that association is and what their work is and what's your involvement as Secretary General.
If you Google my name and the initials Ep4, or you Google my name and peace, or you Google my name and the word Africa, where much of my writing has been done in Africa, you'll find all that. And I do lots of speaking and podcasts and telecasts and webinars about all those subjects. This is the first time I've ever done one on the Avengers,
awesome,
which I both studied and loved the longest of all of them. And the article you noted that maybe we can put in the chat that I wrote and published 10 years ago on the Avengers, and the Avengers as a great prototype of the kind of peace and justice coalition we need to build. Why Vision is a great model for young men trying to be anti-systemic and anti-sexist and all that, but also why the Avengers are a model for coalition building. That was the first and only thing I've ever written on this passion.
What's the name of that article, so I can do a quick Google search and maybe
the website. Okay, you know what? I can put it in, I think.
Okay, if you put it in, it won't link though. So if
okay, so I'll send it to you and it can link. It's called The Avengers New Vision, and let's see if I can put it in. I'll put it into the chat to you, and then you can put it out to the world. But in any case, so I talk about those other things all the time, and I was like a little nervous and very excited about coming and joining you today, so I could finally talk about this thing, which I've been pondering about and trying to tie into and maintain in my reality for literally decades since I was 8. But the International Peace Research
that you brought that to here. Sorry.
No.
That's wonderful. I knew that we would just have a good intellectual conversation, and that you're a little older than me, but the same thing. You're of age 8. You know what I mean? And your line of work is, you studied some different fields, so you're going to come into this with a different perspective, and especially your work in peace and justice. So.
Very quickly, International Peace Research Association, for any of those who might be interested, is the world's oldest and premier collection of peace studies professors and institutions, departments. Peace studies is a multidisciplinary field, mainly at the college level, though there are many K-12 peace educators doing that work in pretty much every city in the world. International Peace Research Association, IPRA, has 5 regional
associations. Programs like restorative justice, that, like, for instance, in my school, we use restorative justice and other things which attempt to address. And
restorative justice is one piece of the field that grew out of our discipline.
Equity and justice and things like that.
So, peace studies as a discipline really got going in the mid to late 1960s. And so, yes, restorative justice is one piece of that basic frame of reference that exists now. Resolving conflicts creatively and conflict resolution is another piece of it. Conflict and war studies, war resistance, reconciliation. There are lots and lots of different pieces of it. Peace journalism. But what IPRA does internationally, what a group called Peace and Justice Studies Association does within the U.S. and Canada, is bring together students and teachers and professors to look at different ways in which we can further conversations like this one, not always linking them into comics or even mass media, but looking at how we can do better at making a world of justice and peace. So that's the short version of it.
That's cool, because you can go into the topic and then find the way into that discussion through that. And comic books is one way, television shows is another way, movies, popular culture, and then where can you find the important things to bring out and discuss and work towards change, right?
Precisely.
So that's really interesting. The IPRA, and again, one more time, this stands for
International Peace Research Association.
Gotcha.
And iprapeace.org is our website.
Let me put that in the chat. I did put the other link. So ipra.org. Hopefully this will be linkable.
IPRAPEACE, IPRAPEAC.org.
Hey, if you're in the chat right now, try to click on these links and let me know if it's working. It's supposed to work. You're supposed to be able to click links if the host of the show puts it in there. So I did pull up this thing right here. Let's take a look. This is the article we were talking about. So if you guys want to click on that other link I shared, you'll see the comic book that we were talking about, the red cover. And this is the article that Matt wrote 10 years ago, but it still holds up because the history of the Avengers goes back how many years? 50 years, 60 years? These superheroes
getting on 60, man. Getting on 60. Not quite 60 yet, but getting on 60.
Uh-huh. You got the feminist Hulk. So Twitter was around when you wrote this, though. Let's see what date is on there. I don't see that. Oh, May 2012. All right, 9 years ago. So we were in the age of social media. Very interesting. Cool. So is there any other profound or just something that you remember that you wanted to talk about from WandaVision on the show that I didn't bring up?
I think those were the main pieces. I think we've covered a lot, and I think we've had some fun doing it. So keep up the great work.
Where do you think it's going to go from here? Are we going to wait all the way until 1 year from now, April 2022, or do you think they're going to develop a second season? Or do you think they're going to start having Vision, the new Vision, appear in some other movies that come out before then?
I have a really hard time doing that. You know, as I say, I love the Avengers first and foremost, and I love the, Scarlet Witch and the Vision and their relationship for a long time. I always loved the connection between the exciting action and some of the interpersonal and intellectual conversations that the team had about team building and relationship building. So I've obviously played the long game. You know, I watched while Spider-Man was the thing. I watched while the X-Men were like everything. I lived through all of it and kept hanging on.
Your thing was Avengers.
Once a month, Avengers. When I was busy with other things in life, I had this thing through many parts of my 30s where, I was coming up and trying to make a living and be a good partner. And so sometime in August, I'd go to the comic shop and I try to buy the last 12 issues, the last year of Avengers, and then read them in the last couple of weeks in August. So I played the long game until all of a sudden 10 years or so ago, 9 years ago, the Avengers first movie, and it's like, oh, everyone loves the Avengers now. And then, I see the Vision and I'm so excited and it's amazing. And then, oh man, it's barely even one movie. He's not even an Endgame. They kill him off again. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I turn around and we get WandaVision.
What a treat for you personally, and anyone else who was like a Vision or a Wanda or a Scarlet Witch.
I say that to say I don't want to answer your question. I don't want to get excited that we'll see Paul Bettany or whomever, that we'll see the Vision again in a year or 6 months or 2 years. All I'm saying is I ain't going anywhere. As long as I'm around, I'm looking for it. I'll be happy and excited with whatever. But yes, of course, if we get more of these fascinating, but also I think exciting questions and answers and possibilities raised for us by things that are dealing with technology, advanced technology over here, and humanity over there, dealing with the fighting the evil with all of our most intense and most dense strength over here, but also in the library, literally, flying amongst the stacks, thinking about our ways out of the problems over there. As long as we're open to that stuff, I'm hoping we see a lot more of the Vision in the future.
So there's one more episode 10, and they said there's going to be a behind the scenes look on how they filmed it, and this was how we made this effect and things like that. So I don't know. I don't think we're getting any more story, but are you looking forward to that?
Of course, absolutely.
I kind of hinted on, like I told people on my social media, this may be the last WandaVision discussion because we're kind of done. This was like we had to debrief. We had to have an after show, an after party, a reaction to episode 9, and then wrapping up the whole series. But maybe something may come up next week and I might decide to do one more. I don't know. If I do, I'm thinking of getting some of the previous guests that I've had on past shows, including yourself, and having like one big mega show with like 7, 8, 9 people. And if it merits it, if it's just, okay, they showed us how they shot certain things that's not that interesting, then I won't. But thanks for being on the show, and we can definitely have you back in the future to talk about other things. I know that you're a martial arts enthusiast as well, and I will be doing some martial arts themed podcasts as well in the future. So be grateful to have you back sometime. Thanks for being on the Cybersky podcast this week. I don't know if you do the whole social media thing. Do you have anything you want to shout out? Can people follow you or go to your website?
You can just go to the website and find me there, but I'll let you know if things come up on my end that'd be interesting. I'll certainly be watching Cybersky and looking forward to hearing more about the world from your point of view. I really appreciate being on here today.
Thank you. Well, thanks to everyone else for watching and listening to this conversation. I hope you found it interesting. Hope you learned some things. Maybe some people might be watching this later after the fact and want to chime in on the comments, agree, disagree. Wow, we covered a lot of stuff. We really went into quantum computers and metaphysics and spirituality and all from this one little, at first, kind of silly TV show. Oh, it's a 50s show. That's cute. But it turned into something a little greater and farther reaching. So thank you, Matt Meyer from the IPRA. And thank you out there for listening. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about Coming to America. I've got a lot of mixed reviews on that. Some people hated it. Some people have been trashing it online. Some people did like it, but I'll be back tomorrow with a few people from different perspectives who think it's trash, who were offended by it, and people who liked it and thought it was pretty funny. So we'll see you then.